Hey, this is your girl Tila Rain Love, aka the Phoenix of Eden, coming at you with a new video.
I can't thrive in survival mode. I just do my best not to overload. Keep some eyes behind your head, the southern transit code. Spreading love and not hate is the antidote. The road we walk is rough, and it's been mighty tough. Ain't never giving up, cause the Father lives in us. Ain't even trying to ball, ain't worried about the mall. And every time I fall, you know it's still my call. My life, it has true meaning, so family, keep believing and never stop your dreaming, and a better world will see. Then I can't thrive in survival mode. I just do my best not to overload. Keep some eyes behind your head, the southern transit code. Spreading love and not hate, spreading love and not hate, spreading love and not hate is the antidote.
Today I want to talk about all men are created equal. We hold these truths to be self-evident. We identify this. Now, of course, you know this was inspired by what I was learning today in history class. And it raised a whole bunch of questions for me about oppression. And it actually opened my mind, because when I thought of oppression, I always instantly thought about slavery. But I didn't really think about oppression and its origin. Oppression has been a part of the human existence since the dawn of man. We kind of have, as African Americans, as blacks, a lot of us kind of have a little bit of tunnel vision when we think of oppression. You know, we just think about how we were oppressed, but we don't really think about how the oppression began. And if I could play devil's advocate for a second, I don't know much. So if you know, you could feel free to type some comments down under the bottom. But I don't know how blacks were before slavery began over there in Africa. I don't know if we were oppressive people over there in Africa. I don't know if we oppressed one another. I've heard stories. I do know that, there were slaves, there were servants in Egypt. I do know that much. I don't know if there were slaves and servants in other places, but I'm sure that if Egypt was built that way, then it wouldn't be hard to believe that other countries in Africa will probably have the same hierarchy or state of existence. Now, European culture I'm very familiar with. I do know that before slavery began, there were peasants, there were servants, there was a hierarchy, there were people being beheaded, there were people being hanged, there were people being burned at the stake. They were being aggressive and they were being oppressive towards one another. So, I really honestly don't think that it is something that I should take as personal as I have taken in the past, looking at this through new, fresh eyes. Oppression has always existed. Now, as we reach the time of enlightenment and we began to break away from having the church at the center of our existence, and we began to think for ourselves, as Rene Descartes said, I think therefore I am. We began to have our own, we began to frame our own thoughts. We began to think about how we could solve our problems versus going to pray to God about it or going to talk to the Reverend about it. And now, let me just clear one thing up. Whether it's meditation, whether it's prayer, whether it's a conversation with yourself, all of that to me is communicating with something that is not just your fleshly self, but having a spiritual conversation. So, whatever one works for you. But all of this ties in for me, with the topic of oppression. All of this ties in for me as, where do I play a part in this? How am I becoming a part of this political construct to oppress others? And I made the connection. How I play a part in what has happened to me through patriarchy, through oppression, how I have adopted myself into that way of thinking is I have been a girl who have judged girls for not being as passable, for not being as feminine, for not being as what we deem to be a Janet Mock or a Candace Kane. And that is unfair. There's a new generation of trans women who are on the rise. There are a new generation of trans people and non-conforming people on the rise. And they are going to be the power behind the trans community. They are going to be the ones who are comfortable and confident enough not to need to have the surgeries to feel as though they are who they say they are. They're not going to need to transition. They're not going to need to get breast implants. They're not going to need to have laser done. They're not going to need to have facial feminization. They're not going to need to undergo all of these different procedures to live up to antiquated ideas of what it means to be a woman or a man. And the best way we could support that generation as the elders of the community, the ones who came up in a generation where the oppressed ideas forced us into assimilation, which we gladly accept because, you know, I'm totally okay with assimilation, and that was ingrained in me. I was just having a conversation with one of my fellow ministers on the phone today, and I was telling her because, you know, they say like my dream right now, everyone should know, is that, you know, I want to have my sex change in June. I'm going to have my sex change in June. When my husband comes home, we're going to get married, and we're not going to be together before we're married, so I'm trying to plan the wedding right along the time that he comes home. Because it'll be legal, because I'll have documentation, you know, to prove after the surgery. Even though I could get the documentation without the surgery, I want to do it this way because I want that. You know, for me, I'm 37 years old, and I've grown up in patriarchy. I've grown up with assimilation being the answer, you know, and I am totally comfortable with that. You know, the idea of assimilating, not assimilating quietly, don't get it twisted, but assimilating. Assimilating into patriarchy, for me, is my best chance. It's my best, because I already went, look how far I've already went, you know, I mean, come on. Assimilating for me, I've had my orchiectomy, I've had laser, I've had my breasts done, had my hips done. Assimilating for me makes sense. Now for another girl, it may not make sense, but it is oppression for me to tell another girl that assimilating is your only choice. For my generation, assimilation was the crack in the window with a room full of shut doors. For this generation, because so many of us have went through that crack in the window, there is now a crack in the door. And it is not fair for us to oppress girls who are not as passable as we are. And when I say passable because the constructs of man, the ideas of man are just that. They are of man. And as men, as mankind, we can recreate that. We are all creators and co-creators, and we are the ones who design and fashion this new world, this new earth. We are the co-creators of this new earth. And if we buy into what what has been established for us in the past, then our silence is our consent. Martin Luther King said silence is betrayal. So while I feel that assimilation into patriarchy is what I want, what I dream of, what I desire, and who knows, maybe after I've experienced it, maybe the story will change. Maybe I will have different ideas. Who knows? But I have not experienced it, so I cannot tell you. Just as I was talking to my female minister on the phone and I was telling her, I said, I really can't tell you, for cisgender women, patriarchy is still patriarchy. I mean, you're still having to cope in a male-dominated society as a woman. But when you haven't even had that choice, and I haven't even had that choice, I've been trying to cope in a male-dominated society as a trans woman, a black trans woman at that. So oppression it should be another word. Oppress, depress, oppress, depress. So I mean, I'm worried about when I go in the bathroom. Is my pee stream sounding different? I'm constantly looking down to see if if anything's showing or if anything that came loose or when I'm trying to wear old tights or something like that. I'm worried about foolishness because of the way that I was raised, the generation that I came up in. But I look at these young girls that be walking around and tuck be showing and all type of stuff. And, in my mind, I be saying, Lord, look at that foolishness. But these girls are confident and comfortable. And it's not for me to judge them because that is oppression. That is oppression. That's telling that girl that you are not enough because you are not doing what society says you should do in order to be somewhat normal, whatever that is. So my eyes were open today, not only open to the oppression that is being passed around the trans community by the transsexual versus the transgender, but my eyes were also open to the fact that just because we were oppressed as blacks, just because we're being oppressed as women, it doesn't make the powers that be, which in this society are white men, it doesn't mean that they are evil or wicked. It just means that hurt people will hurt people. If you're oppressed, you're going to oppress other people. And it's as simple as that. And they were being oppressed over there in Europe before any oppression happened to us. And the best way to break this cycle, the best way to create change is to identify that ugly monster and pull it out by the roots. Call it what it is. And I want to take this time to apologize to every girl who I have ever offended because I thought that she wasn't feminine enough, or I thought that she wasn't passable enough, and I thought that she needed to go and get this, and I thought that she needed to go and get that. Rene Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. I would like to take this time to say, you are because you say you are, not because you've made any changes. I love you. New Legacy.
I can't thrive in survival mode. I just do my best not to overload. Keep some eyes behind your head, the southern transit code. Spreading love and not hate is the antidote. The road we walk is rough, and it's been mighty tough. Ain't never giving up, cause the Father lives in us. Ain't even trying to ball, ain't worried about the mall. And every time I fall, know it's still my call. My life, it has true meaning. So family, keep believing and never stop your dreaming. And a better world will see. Then I can't thrive in survival mode. I just do my best not to overload. Keep some eyes behind your head, the southern transit code. Spreading love and not hate.